All right, hello again, everybody. Look at this. We're almost all sitting down. This is amazing. So day 2 of our reunion, and thank you for being here. Especially with the weather. I think Mark Twain used to say, everybody likes to talk about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. I can promise you, we are back there working every lever we've got to try and make sure it's sunny and clear for our reception outside after the main event. So here we are. We have a panel coming up, and every year we like to bring up some leaders from our non-insurance businesses so you can learn a little bit more about what those businesses and people are all about. And I think you're in for a treat on this one. And so I'm going to introduce Andrew Crowley, who is the president of Markel Ventures, and he'll bring on the panel. Thank you all very much.
Good morning, everybody. Real treat. First time moderator here, so following Richard Coughlin is a little bit of a tough act, not to mention Tom and Jennifer, who did an awesome job sharing some stories with you all this morning. But I hope we'll get some great stories from Joche and Rick as well about their businesses. You'll get to know them as people. I'm looking for my wife here. She never gets to come to these things. I do want to see her, so she could raise her hand. And if she's not here, it's because she's still taking the kids to school. Elizabeth, you out there somewhere? All right, she'll be here soon, or maybe she'll no-show me. Want to thank everybody who's put this together. It's a real treat. 3rd year at U of R. They do a great job hosting. I could go on and on about my teammates across the Markel Group that have helped put this event on for you and for us. I've been friends with these guys for a little while. I think I've known Rick about 15 years. He's known my father much longer. I've known Joche 8 years, but given that we're at U of R, I figured first place to start is just, Rick, where'd you go to college?
I went to the University of Georgia.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Joche?
University of Florida, the national champion Florida Gators, by the way.
So if you don't think Markel Group is a come one, come all place, the fact that you've got 2 dogs and a gator sitting on the stage together, and we'll see if we can make it 58 minutes and 11 seconds longer without killing each other. So both these guys are 3rd-generation leaders of their family businesses, and they've been in their roles for nearly 3 decades. And so I hope you'll get a little bit of the story of that journey for them. But if you wouldn't mind, just start off. Some of the folks in the audience know Metromont, some know Costa, but some may not. Rick, would you mind telling us a little bit about what Metromont does?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. So Metromont, we're in the precast, pre-stressed concrete business. We serve pretty much from southern Pennsylvania to Miami. And the precast business we're in is mostly vertical. We're not in the utility precast, which is under the ground. And the pre-stressed part, don't want to get too deep into it, but it's a wire rope that we stretch to a certain tension, say 30,000 pounds. And when we pour the concrete around it, we let the concrete set up and we cut that cable, and it acts like a rubber band. And it wants to go back to its original length, but it can't because of the strength of the concrete, and which compresses the concrete and allows us to have longer spans. Predominantly, we are in the parking deck business. That's probably close to 40–50% of our work. And we do a lot of data centers, especially up here in Loudoun County and surrounding counties. Student housing, we've gone as high as 14 stories on a total precast student housing job at Penn State. And we do industrial buildings, pretty much anything vertical. As it gets past about 3 stories, I think we'd be competitive.
And Rick, what are some of the advantages of pre-stress, precast concrete relative to the pour-in-place stuff that folks might be more familiar with?
Well, I think the main one is speed. We are in a plant environment, so everything we do is custom made. We don't make anything for stock, so unless we have a job, we're not making concrete or making pieces. And it's like a giant Lego set, but only out of concrete. And we store it at our plant, and the job site, when they're ready for us, we come out with a crane and put the structure up. So that saves a great deal of time, and it cuts down on the people on the job site, and it's plant quality. So we have a quality control program, and we advertise the plant quality.
Appreciate that. Joche, a little bit about Costa Farms. I think it's a little easier given the backdrop here as we sit on stage for folks to think about it.
We just grow and sell plants.
Come on, a little more than that.
No. So we grow. So we're farmers that grow things that you don't eat, right? So we grow ornamental plants, annuals, perennials, indoor house plants, things like orchids and cacti and succulents and palms. Our largest suppliers are Home Depot. Largest customers, Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart. We've got several growing locations in Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, here in Virginia. We've got a big stock farm in the Dominican Republic. We've got about 5,500 employees. And just to get a sense of, it's about 140 million plants that we grow a year. And we service roughly about 400 stores a day. We make deliveries about 400 stores a day. It's about 130,000 deliveries that we do throughout the year. And so,
Total number of plants that you'd grow in a year, roughly?
So about 140 million. You weren't paying attention. I said that already.
Got it. Just want to make sure everybody heard it.
Okay.
Just want to make sure everybody heard it. 140 million plants.
140 million.
Apparently, I didn't hear it, but everybody else did. So each of your businesses has a rich history, and not to say that Costa isn't longstanding, but Metromont's celebrating 100 years this year in business, and really only led by 3 people over that 100-year period, each members of your family. Rick, would you just tell us a little bit about that history, how the business started, and how it's gotten to be where it is today?
Well, it started by my grandfather back in 1925. He had some experience before he started in the construction business, designing bridges. He was the initial engineer and a founding member of the South Carolina Department of Transportation. So he decided he wanted to do something else, so he got in the concrete business in 1925, where we started with ready mix and block. In the old days, they actually molded block by hand. We've come a long way since then. And in the late 50s is when we got into the pre-stressed concrete business. I don't think there was a pre-stressed job until the late 40s. So the plant that we had in Greenville, South Carolina was one of the first 5 plants in the country. And fast forward, in 1983, we sold to RMC, a majority interest in the company. And then in 1998 is when RMC took us out of everything but the pre-stress. We were their only pre-stress operation in the country, and RMC was a worldwide concrete, ready mix, and block operation. So we operated like that, still had minority interest. We had a buy-sell agreement, and 2003 came along, and the world was not doing well, and nothing was doing well in the United States, and we said this is the time to exercise the buy-sell agreement to see if they would allow us to buy it back. It was the pre-stress was always something that I gravitated towards. I worked in the block business and the ready-mix business, and the block business, you're just sitting there watching blocks come out, and the pre-stress is something that changes every day. Like I said, everything's custom made. New day every day, a lot of excitement, a lot of trying to figure out how to build buildings. So I just loved that, and I said, well, this is the time to do it. And so in 2003, we bought all the stock back and been operating that way since.
Seems like it worked out pretty well.
It did. Worked out great.
And Joche, a little bit about Costa Farms. So coming on 65 years, I think, next year.
Yeah.
So not quite as long tenured as Metromont, but also a really long history. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my wife's grandfather started the business in 1961 when he emigrated from Cuba. My father-in-law and his brother joined the business in the mid-'60s and early '70s. And they ran the business up until the '90s. I mean, my wife and I are kind of high school sweethearts. I've always been part of the family, involved. My first summer jobs were at Costa, which were miserable. But in 1992, I joined the family business. Tony Costa, my father-in-law, was the CEO. And I joined in the middle of June of 1992, and August 24th of 1992, Hurricane Andrew ripped through South Dade, and it devastated the nursery. I mean, the place was just on its knees. And it didn't do well. My father-in-law did not handle it mentally. He did not handle it well. It was a very difficult time for him. So I was 25 years old. My wife was 24 years old. My father-in-law at the time was 52. And there was very little leadership in the organization. And we sort of stepped in we got to decide what we're going to do. And there were the Tony Costa branch of the family, my father-in-law's side of the family, had about 30% of the business. The other 70% of the shareholders, his brother, his sister, his parents, everybody, when they saw that we did not have the resources to rebuild the business, and at the time we didn't have any personal guarantees because there was very little debt on the business. I was making plans. We were kind of working during the day, like hauling pieces of greenhouses, to areas that were designated to dump, and then at night we were putting together business plans. And put together a plan to go borrow $6 million from a local banker. And the banks honestly were kind of falling all over themselves to help. They really wanted to, kind of come out in the front page of the Miami Herald that, hey, we're here to help Costa Farms. And so we put together a plan, and we went to the shareholders and we said, well, guys, everybody needs to sign, anybody that owns more than 10% needs to sign a personal guarantee. And nobody was any use to any personal guarantees because I said the company's mostly equity financed. And when they saw the way the place looked, everybody said, no. So they just said, give me my stuff and I will leave. And what made it even a little more complicated at the time was that my wife's uncle, Mike, so Tony's brother, Mike, he had a business, and in his business, he had a nursery that everything he grew sold through Costa Farms. So when there's all this ambiguity, kind of lack of leadership at our place, and I say our place, I had been there for 2 months, but Mike, some of the folks that we could not employ any longer, Mike ends up he hires them, and they're starting to call on our customers, and we're sort of started competing overnight. But we got into business again, and we called it back then the new Costa Nursery. That year in 1993, the year after the hurricane, we sold about $13 million was our sales. Obviously, right now we're 50 plus times bigger than that, so we've grown quite a bit. And so we haven't kind of looked back since.
It's quite a story. When were the first signs really post Hurricane Andrew where you felt like you guys were on the right track? So you're at $13 million and all of a sudden you sort of look around and say, I think we got something special here.
I think that honestly we were so young and naive. Naive was probably big. I don't want to say stupid, but naive.
Stupid's good. Stupid,
yeah, kind of stupid. That we had no idea. You have the saying of we didn't know that we couldn't do the things that we were doing, so we just did them. So it was. I don't think there was ever a moment that you say, "Oh my gosh, we arrived." It was just a drive to grow and to win and to make life difficult for our competition along the way. And there's an obsession with winning at the business, and so I don't know that we ever kind of stopped. It was just always like we got to feed the monster. We got to do more. We got to do more. We got to do more. We got to do more.
For sure.
So,
appreciate that. So you guys have each been CEO for roughly 3 decades, and you talked about sort of pivotal moments when not only you took additional leadership on, but pivotal moments for your business. Rick, talk to me about what's sort of the same in how you would lead the company today versus what you feel like you've learned over 3 decades in the role as CEO.
Oh, wow. Let's see. So, our leadership style really comes from my father and my grandfather. And actually, the genesis of it was probably my grandfather, who was a hard-charging guy, very compassionate, although you wouldn't know it from the looks of him. considered himself a nonconformist. And, you know, he always believed that he knew the best way to do things, but he would listen to other ways. And I would say, you know, my mother would say that I was a nonconformist as well, too, in a lot of ways. So that spirit has resonated within the company to where we look after each other, we respect each other in the operation, and we've just got a great team that is passionate about what they do, and you know, you give them the tools they need and help them along and ask questions. That's pretty much our style all the way through the organization.
Appreciate that. Joche, what about you? You were stupid, I guess, when you took over, so maybe,
Yeah,
maybe
some
less
of that
less
changed,
stupid today. But what's the same and what's different? Joche 24, 25 versus Joche with a gray beard and less hair.
Probably the biggest difference is there's absolutely zero compromising on values. Honestly, when we were young and we had a lot of debt and working through growth, and I was intimidated, by somebody that knew a lot, and said, oh man, we can't afford to let so-and-so go, even though they are this kind of person because they have this relationship with the Home Depot or they have this or that. And I'm not sure if can I say?
Yeah, sure. You just did.
So we just wouldn't put up with that now. At the end of the day, there's absolutely zero compromising on values, period. And that's not something that happened over the last year, but it was a time. But going back the last 10 or 15 years, if you didn't fit into the organization, and I get a kick out of it when people say, well, I want to understand your values, to see if I can learn them, or we don't teach people values, we screen for values, right? I mean, if you're not humble, if you're not driven, if you don't have a sense of urgency, then you're just not going to fit in, and we can't teach you to be those things. So that's probably the thing that's changed the most. And I'll tell you, there's been all along, and I appreciate that you said it, Rick, an absolute respect, to treat everybody well all the time. You have somebody who's a poor performer and things aren't working out, you treat them with respect, we teach them, we try to develop them, and if not, they got to go. But absolutely teach, there's a lot of love in the organization, which is something that I think we've talked about before. But when people ask me to describe the company, we talk about winning a lot, and we talk about love a lot, and humility. So.
My partner, Peter Partee, who's somewhere in the audience, can't quite see all the faces, talks about one of the roles in culture is to pull out the bad, and that's some of what you talked about there. But another part is lift up the good, and later today we'll talk about Markel style winners for this year, as we've done as an annual tradition as part of our meeting. What are some of the ways you guys lift up the values of your organization? And I think you referenced humble, hustle, and hungry in your values, and Rick, I think you referenced faith, honor, and passion as you were describing it. But how do you lift that up in the organization and make sure that people see the shining stars in your business?
Well, we live it out. So, faith, we trust everybody, trust our partners, trust our associates, and faith, and also another word that comes to mind is, belief. We have belief in everybody that works for Metromont. And then the passion, we want everybody to have a drive and a passion to do well, and like Joche says, we screen for that. We desire to have that, because we know if they have that passion, they know when they're winning, they know when they're not winning. I don't have to be told I could have done something better or not, and that permeates through the corporation, and it's a great way to manage, because we can collaborate, and if something goes wrong, it's no pointing fingers. It's say, what do we do now? How do we get out of this? And I think that reflects that culture, and that and those values reflect to our customers as well. They understand that, and they see that, and I think that's why we have the relationships we have, because it's a simple thing. It's all about relationship, whether it be within the corporation and outside the corporation with your partners and customers.
Joche, anything to add from Costa?
Well, I mean, on our end, and I think you said, like, you live in it, so, you know, we have fun with the Triple H thing, right? And, you know, with the humble, hungry hustle, but it's something that, like, it's become part of the core of everything that we talk about. You know, when people talk about a new employee, and we say, how do you think Rick is doing? And they'll go right to those values at first. You know, he's this, or he's not. I'm not sure if it's a good fit here or there or whatever. So it's just absolutely become a fiber in the organization. It's not something, I mean, it is plastered in different places throughout the organization, but people know that that's part of it, you know, period.
Each of you guys mentioned stories of growth when you were talking about history, and Joche, I think you said 13 million to roughly 50 times that number today. Are there key moments in that growth or key mindsets as to how do you grow a business from being $13 million to something much, much larger today? Joche, I'll start with you.
I'll tell you a story, but it's not going to inspire confidence.
Appreciate that. Don't worry, it's just our shareholders out here. I think we have like 25% of all shares in the audience right now, so thank you.
All right, let's go to Rick.
You go ahead.
By all means, Joche, indulge us.
So in our business, the primary business that we were in for an extended period of time was just the indoor plant business. And if you know, when we say ornamental plants, it means different things to different people. But the indoor plant category is the one that we were primarily in, and it's still the largest part of our business. And today, when we look at, we have expanded into the annual business, perennial business, other businesses. And today, if we look at anything, we look at a new operating unit we want to make for acquisition or a new category, there's all kinds of financial analysis done and work on the consumer and on the retailer and, the go-to-market strategy and everything. And that's just not the way it was, though, 20 years ago. And so 20 years ago, when we first decided to get into the annual business, there was a company called Level Farms back then. And we looked at Level Farms and we're like, man, those guys, they got big houses and big boats. They must make a lot of money. This sounds like a great idea. and that was pretty much the whole, I remember the day we had the conversation, that was like the whole analysis. So we lost a bunch of money, and we figured it out over time. My wife played a huge role, actually, in figuring that out over time. But it's happened, just like some of the acquisitions now. Like, I think back then, too, I don't think we valued as much as we grew the business through acquisition, in particular, the people. Like, the right people on the team joining our team has added so much value over the years. And, a lot of times we just thought, well, we'll just plug and play, and you get so-and-so, and you do this and do that, and my God, it just did not work out really well. But we've learned a lot.
And I think it was in Omaha at our brunch, not this year, but the year before, I got asked a question about the types of growth that we see in our businesses. And I did talk about the partnership with Battlefield and how the unique nature of the cultures behind those businesses. Would you also add a little more of the color? Because I can't give all the details, but we've got a farm now here in Virginia led by folks that maybe are a little bit different than the folks that grew up in the Costa business, but also share some of the values you talked about.
Okay. You don't want me to use that word, though, the one?
No.
Okay. So our family is Hispanic background. We've been in the business since the 60s. There are a lot of Dutch nurseries in the States, and there is a particular family called the Van Wingerden family that there were 16 brothers and sisters that came over here decades ago, and every one of I say every one, it's like 14 out of the 16 or 15 out of 16 opened up their own nurseries. And there's a network of the Van Wingerden cousins, and some of them collaborate well with each other, some of them don't. Some of them are not in business anymore, some of them run phenomenal businesses. And so a year and a half ago, the Cuban guys did a deal with the Dutch guys for the first time in our industry, which was kind of interesting because people view us as, even when people talk about on the supplier side, even on the customer side, they talk about the Dutch. And I don't know exactly what to say about us, but the Cubans or whatever, everybody thinks, well. So anyway, it was just interesting to kind of break that barrier. And again, that's another phenomenal example of the folks that run a very well-run operation. It's here in Rapidan, Virginia. And it's just been another opportunity for us to continue to grow. And what's happened over the years, about half of our growth has been organic, half of it's been through acquisition, is we've built, just like Markel has, we've built a very good brand in our industry. And this is, again, I don't know how many acquisitions we've done, but we have never been in a competitive process in an acquisition, not once. Every time people have come to us and said, we just want to work out a deal. We know how you treated these guys fairly, or you treated those guys fairly, let's work out a deal. And it's the same thing we did with these guys. And so they didn't do a deal with their cousins and the other folks, they did a deal with us. So it speaks a lot, I think, of our team and again, the brand that we built in the industry.
Yeah, and we were at the national business meeting after they joined the first time, and I think you welcomed them with a clip from Austin Powers, which was something to the tune of, there's two things that I can't stand, and they are
intolerant of other cultures and the Dutch.
Yes, and the Dutch.
Yes.
So
yes, welcome.
So for anyone that visits Costa Farms, you will be greeted with such open arms. Rick Metromont, also tremendous growth story since the 2003 reacquisition by you and your father. Are there some pivotal moments in that? And maybe it's the Shockey moment. You talked about data centers earlier, or others that you would say are really critical to the business you have today.
Yeah, I think the Shockey moment was a very, very successful story there. Shockey was a competitor of ours up here in Winchester, Virginia, and they had a strong hold on the data center market, and they came to market, and we just decided that's something that we needed. It fit well with our geographic reach, fit well with our culture, the people. And the more and more we got to know the Shockey Group, the more and more we said this has got to happen. And so we were fortunate enough to come away with that business, and it paid immediate dividends. The data center market just exploded at that point, and they were able to pick it they're just great at what they do. And another part of our growth has been organic, and then we knew we were in the parking structure business. Everybody thought we were a parking structure company. And I mentioned we do about 40, 50%. Well, it used to be about 60, 70%. So we said we just can't rely on this business. We need to go to other market segments. So we just started believing that anything 5 stories above can be made out of total precast, and that's when we started having success with student housing, multifamily, and that business has really taken off as well. It's helped us level out the playing field as far as not depending so much on one segment.
Appreciate that. Bit of a loaded topic here, given I'm sitting here and we've got Markel shareholders in the audience. But there was a moment in your journey where you probably never thought about bringing on a partner, but one day there was a reason why you considered it. Would each of you take us to that time in your life, and you know, what interested you in bringing on a partner, and how did you go about thinking what type of folks would be the right fit for Metromont and for Costa? Joche, we'll start with you.
So look, my wife has a great family, but like in many family businesses, I guess, you know, the bigger things got, the more complicated they got with the family. And with, you know, working shareholders and particularly non-working shareholders, it got to the point where, you know, the family leadership was not, we were spending too many resources dealing with family issues. And I mean, not to mention there's a couple people that I wanted to, you know, physically assault. But it wasn't productive. It really was not productive. And we weren't spending the energy growing the business. We were spending the energy, you know, dealing with family issues. And so we had just gotten to the point that we decided something had to give. And Bill Flaherty, who's a good friend of mine, who was on our board for a while, and who you know, and Mike knows, and Tom knows, Bill was reading a book, Beyond Buffett is the name of the book.
I've got Larry Cunningham somewhere here in the audience.
Yeah, he sat across from me yesterday. And Bill said, look, guys, you know, I can help you do something. Bill's a guy who's a finance guy, you know, for years. And he knew the issues that the family had and that we needed to do something. And so he helped facilitate it, but he literally picked up the phone and I think called Bill Wyrick, here, and that's what started our conversations. And we, talked to a few other folks, and this for me was the absolute best fit. And I was concerned because I was going to stay as an operator. Some of the non-family members, obviously it was more of just a transaction for them, but the partnership has been phenomenal. It has been absolutely phenomenal. It's been, again, my wife's got a great family, but the capital is more patient. It's just a phenomenal partnership. I can't say enough good things about it. And you guys probably figured out I'm going to say whatever's on my mind, but it's been an absolutely great partnership working with you guys and being part of Ventures.
Appreciate that. Rick, what about you?
Yeah, so being third generation, I didn't have any family members that really wanted to take up the mantle. And so I thought about it for years, and then I got to the age where I said, I got to do something here. And at the beginning of it, I said, I was always thinking about the legacy of the company and the associates, and I wanted to take care of them and not turn it over to someone that was going to flip it in 3 years or whatnot. So we went through a process, and I'll never forget, it wasn't you guys, but I went into a meeting with a potential buyer, and I was like, this is not going to work out well. And, I just cannot get along with this fellow. I'm sure he recognizes that from the way I'm answering his questions. And I walk out, I said, I can't work for him, and they said, calm down, calm down. And then they said, Markel had called, and they said, they know you. And I said, really, who is Markel? And they said, well, it's Andrew Crowley. I said, okay, yeah, I know Andrew Crowley. I know his family. I grew up with Mike. Mike was a little bit older, but Mike was one of my golf heroes growing up. I was a little 12-year-old. He was getting ready to go to Wake Forest, and whenever Mike asked you to play golf with you, you just felt honored. And so that's how then I got to play with you a couple of times. If you want a rematch, we can have a rematch.
Just to be clear, in the semifinals of the Linville 4-ball, Rick and his partner beat me and my partner a number of years back. It was really bad weather. They got lucky, but they did beat us. So that was,
but then,
one moment.
Everything, so the more and more we got to know Andrew and the team, Tom and Mike and Jason, we just felt comfortable. We said, this is, I felt comfortable with the associates announcing a partner like Markel to our associates. And the more I brought them into the process, the more they got excited about it. And it just the glove fit perfectly. And it's been great ever since. I'll agree with this. It's been fantastic.
Appreciate that, and they truly were free to say whatever they want, and one thing we do when connecting with a new business or a leader that might join our family is give them the opportunity to talk to guys like this, and don't script any of that. Just give them a call, chat through with it, and these are just two incredible ambassadors for the Markel Group and the Markel Ventures family. Let's jump forward to business today. There's a lot of noise in the world, tariffs, all that kind of stuff. We won't focus on that. We won't try to predict that up here on stage. But what's life like at Costa Farms right now? What are you guys focused on, in 2025? And what are you also doing to make sure that 10 years from now you're as strong, if not stronger, in the marketplace? Yeah.
So right now, literally, like right now, we're just focused on finishing to deliver spring, right? We do half of our business happens in a 3-month time period, and that time is just starting to wind down now here over the next 10 days or so. But look, for us, we're not a business where there's lots of brands, and so the retailers want to control generally the brands, in their locations, and we've had some success over the last few years, getting the Costa name out there more and more and more. And when you ship 130 to 140 million units out there, and you've got your name on all of them, you start to build, a bit of a following with the end consumers. But look, the biggest thing with us is about differentiation. If we're just growing the same plants and delivering them the same way, year after year after year, then we're just fighting over nickels and dimes and, trying to just get an extra dollar of freight, on on a particular truck. So, and all those things are important, but at the end of the day, what we're trying really, really hard is to continue to revamp our product offering. And there is a whole lot of latency on our supply chain. When we decide we're going to bring something to market, that's kind of impressive that I use that word, by the way.
For sure. For a University
make a
of Florida
comment
grad.
like that at the nursery.
For a
wow,
Gator.
Yeah, for a Gator, you're right.
Yeah, it's impressive.
National champion Gator.
Yeah. In basketball, but football more recently, I think Georgia's won it.
Anyway, you asked me the question.
Okay, sure.
So there's just a lot of time that it takes to bring things to market. And that's one of the things. I mean, we invest in so much consumer research and then so much production research. And then once we decide, wow, this is a winner, then we generally ship product down to our Dominican Republic facility. And then a couple of years later, we get that product and I'm growing. So it's just, so there's so many things that we have in the works today that are exciting, that are going to be coming to market in 2027, 28, 29, even 2030. That to me, the thing is about keeping that pipeline full and making sure that we're constantly differentiating ourselves from our competitors' offerings.
Rick, anything to add for Metromont today and looking into the future?
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited about the future just because of our people. 10 years ago, we said, listen, we've got to find the next generation to run the company. And we've been very successful in finding a group of people that are shining right now. And so it's fun to see them grow and to make decisions and to get into that position as a future leader of the company. So that excites me. We would like a little bit more certainty on the tariff thing. That does affect us a little bit, but it will come. We really, as we grew so quickly for the last 10 years, it's easy to get wrapped up in working in the business, going from pillar to post and putting out a fire or doing this or that. And we're making a concentrated effort now to spend some time working on the business, doing a little bit more strategic planning and maybe finding out where AI can help us as far as the engineering and drafting part. So those are things that I'm excited about that too. We've got the bandwidth to do that now, and that's exciting because I think that's in the general contracting world. It's all about schedule. So anytime you can compress the schedule, the better off you are.
Each of you guys either directly or indirectly alluded to team. You've got some of your teammates here in the audience. Would you just mention some of the folks that you've brought in over the years and the roles they play and how they help you? Certainly you all each carry the title of CEO, but Joche, I think you said 5,500 people. Rick, you're in the 1,500 to 2,000 range. So literally a third of all Markel Group employees are under the guidance of these folks, but also your team. So talk a little bit about the team you've got there at Costa Farms, Joche.
So I really do think that we have a great team. I mean, a phenomenal team. There's Tom wrote something that we use all the time in our in the lingo that we talk, about all the tough decisions. And that's one thing. I'm going to go back just for a second. So when, growing up, I remember being around a particular leader that I thought was a pretty good leader, but I mean, he avoided confrontation and avoided difficult things, and that it really bugged me. It really, really bugged me. And so that's something that I've always kind of run towards, is, I don't mean run towards conflict, but I mean, is don't shy away from any of the difficult stuff. And everybody on my team, we say, everybody wants to be a lion until it's time to do real lion shit. And I would just tell you that all of our executives, they're all a bunch of lions. I mean, they understand that our job is to make the hard decisions. They all work plenty of hours and so forth, but the tough thing is making the right decisions, making sure we have the right people in place. We're giving people the opportunity to grow in the business, and we're supporting them, but that they, really, 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 really have a really high hoot factor. I won't say that one again, but they're all they're lions like that. And there's several of them here. I mean, our CFO, Jesus, is here, even though he kind of retired me early yesterday. Thank you, Jesus. So Jesus is here. My son, Jose Jr., who's part of the 4th generation that takes over as president this summer, okay? Not CEO. By the way, a couple people came up to me yesterday. Wow, well, I guess you're transitioning out. And I'm like, what's going on here, man?
Maybe Jesus was sending you a message.
Yeah, I guess. Then JD is here. He's an operator, one of the best operators I think that we've ever had has run the business. Fabian, who runs our supply chain. I mean, we've got a Markel Style Award winner here too, Carlos Varela, who he's actually, exemplifies the kind of leadership that we're talking about. I mean, my father died many years ago, but I learned a lot of leadership, from him. And in particular, when we talked about, what our role is, and our role, if you don't mind using a football analogy, I know you're not a football guy.
Sure.
But our role is to block, Our role is to block, it's not to score. It's to block and let our teammates, let the folks around us, let them score. And Carlos, who runs, over $100 million part of our business, and it's all the multi-channel sales team, but he is a great guy that really helps develop people on his team and helps them succeed. And that's why he's here with us today. But anyway, that to me is critical. And I think that there's, that our entire team reflects those values. And one thing too, which I didn't mention before, which is really, really important to us, to me, is that people be vulnerable. You got to be vulnerable. You got to let us know when you don't know. It's okay. And to me, it's just such a sign of maturity and strength that you don't know. So let's just work through it. Anyway, that's what I got.
Appreciate that, Rick. What would you have to say about your teammates that are both here and back across all your plants?
Yeah, so I echo a lot of what Joche said. We've just got a great team. They're like-minded. They're passionate about what they do. They like to win. And, we like to have fun as well, but you can have more fun as you win, right? And, winning is, winning a job or just winning the praise of a customer. That's what these guys are driven to do. And they know when they're winning. So I've got Doug Callender here, our CFO, and Chuck Gant, our VP of the Carolinas, and Chris Pastorius, who's VP of Virginia, and Jason Woodard. And we also have a Markel Style winner as well, John Wood here. And John Wood is just one of those guys that when you got a problem or you need something done, you go to John. I remember when we had a Charlotte plant, it's closed now, but we had some issues up there, and John voluntarily said, I'll go up there. And he drove up there literally every day, 70-something miles for about 3 years. And now we moved that plant to Greenville. But John's just a great human being. And I think the whole staff is, and they love to coach these young guys, the young people we have working for us now. It's because it's all about coaching, coaching and winning.
Appreciate that. I was told that we have the ability to do some Q&A with the audience here. I'm looking to see as to how we would operationalize that. But with 15 minutes or so left, we would love to welcome any questions you have. I'll look to the Gophers, the Reunion Rangers here. I do see a hand in the back, and if the group is not able to hear the question, I'll repeat it back, and then these guys can help address it. There was a question back there. So the question was about structuring transactions in these two businesses as examples. There was a specific reference to Costa Farms as a family-owned business that maybe had a low basis in its investment, and was there a consideration for using stock? I'm just the moderator. I'm not here to answer these questions, but I will tackle that. The reality is, I think of late you all have heard we've talked about we continue to believe in Markel stock. I think Tom has come out and said that he doesn't feel like the market has fully given us credit for the quality of businesses, and you've met a couple of them up here. If you study Berkshire, if you study others over time, stock can be expensive in hindsight, particularly for a relentless compounder like Markel Group. We would listen to sellers and their needs. That's always important. One of the things we think about when structuring a transaction is really almost handing the LOI to them and say, what's important to you? And seeing if we can make that work rather than saying, here are the terms that work for us. So I don't know that these guys want to comment necessarily on their personal financial decisions and what it meant to them to do it. But it's something we consider. We do know that stock can be an expensive currency, and our goal is to today probably reduce shares rather than add to them where prudent. Yes, question here. We've got a microphone.
Yeah, great conversation. So I'm curious from Rick and Jose, what do you like about, or what did you like about working with Markel as a shareholder? What sort of
What, I mean, to me, it was weird getting comfortable with the notion that they were not going to be in our business. I mean, I felt great, but when you imagine when you go, this was a family-owned business for 50-something years, and I go and I sit down with our whole team and I said, we're doing a transaction, and we're doing a transaction with Markel and blah blah blah, and several people on our different teams, right? I've been part of other transactions before they joined Costa, and so right away people start, well, who are we going to talk to? Who's the Markel guy? Where are they going to sit? How often are they going to be here? And when we said, guys, I mean, what I'm hearing, and I did like what you said, we talked to a couple of the CEOs, and that we're going to run things, pretty much the way we've been running them for the last 50 years. And people didn't really believe that, and it took a little bit of time. But for us, that approach was and you talk about humility too, right? Not somebody coming in that we met with, PE group that they're, at the end of the day, want to come and tell us how we're going to run the business, how much we're going to spend, what we're going to do, and then when we're going to flip the business. It didn't sit well with me at all. But the approach that these guys took was very appealing. It was hard to, like I said, to get my arms around until you actually lived it, and talking to the other CEOs was super helpful.
I would agree, totally agree. It was the long game. You guys came in and told us what you were going to do, and like I said, I turned the curtain back a little bit during the process with some of our guys, and they got comfortable. And everything you said has come true. And I was a little scared as well that, people coming up, so is my job safe? Is my job safe? I said, yes. And because I remember you saying, the only way we can mess this up is tell you what to do. Because, we don't know your business, you know your business, and that was a refreshing statement, and it's been a great relationship.
Yeah, can I say one other thing too? I'll go back to one of the first meetings we had with Tom. So we closed on August 17th, 2017. Hurricane Irma, hurricanes is kind of a thing down here. Hurricane Irma, caused a lot of damage in our company about 3 to 4 weeks after we closed. And so at the time we did have insurance because we like to sleep. And so when we sat down, we had a board meeting of just 3 weeks after the hurricane had hit the farm. And we came I came to the board and said, well, here's the deal. We've got $25 million of structure insurance. We can kind of repair the place, patch it together with about $15 million. And we can take $10 million and pay down debt, pay distribution, do whatever you want. Or we could spend all the money and rebuild the place really probably the way it should be rebuilt. And again, there's no hesitation ever. Tom just said, what would you do if you're going to own this business for 100 years? I said, I'd spend all the money. I mean, it's the right thing to do. We're going to be just better off when the next storm comes. I said, okay, then that's it. Let's move on to the next point. And I thought, oh shit, these guys are for real.
Appreciate that.
So, but it's just been consistent, the whole time. It's very, very predictable, which is really great.
And maybe add the story about Mike coming down there during Irma and clearing out all the sunscreen in South Florida.
Man, yeah. Mike came down like, I want to come help. I'm like, Mike, you're not going to help us, man. Don't just wear a big hat. We'll put gloves, big, thick gloves, a lot of sunscreen, and put that dude over there somewhere and just let him stay out of the way. But anyway, it was great. Mike did come down, spend a couple days with us, working our tails off. But it's just been very consistent since day one. There's a couple stories like that.
Yeah, and I'll add, for those that have the privilege or maybe burden of visiting our office, when you go in our conference room, you see pictures of moments in history at Markel Ventures, and there is a picture of your team rebuilding at Hurricane Irma, and there's two things you notice. One, Mike, because he's like translucent. You can see him there. And two, I ask people when they come in, point to the CEO. Show me who the CEO is. And not a single person has gotten it right, because the reality at Costa Farms is everybody pitched in. And it didn't matter what your role was. You were out there rebuilding the farm, making it stronger. There wasn't an executive sitting in an office. Everybody was out in the fields. Question here.
Thank you. First of all, thanks very much for being so candid with your experience at Markel. Autonomy has been a big theme that both of you have brought up here. Since you joined the family, would you say there are any other ventures, other benefits that Markel has brought to your business beyond giving you the autonomy to operate it the way you'd like to?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the company experienced its worst year in 2022. Okay, our company, Costa Farms. We had a massive, expansion that happened during COVID, and like I mentioned, and I'll use the fancy word again, latency. No, in our supply chain, it takes a long time to get things set up to grow. And so as we're planning for growth for 21 and 22, we got into trouble because the demand just kind of fell off, and we had a very difficult time in 22. We had our product, we can't, when you start to grow our product, it's either going to end up at a retailer or it's going to end up at a dump somewhere. And so we had a really difficult year in 2022. That's the same year that the folks from Battlefield Farms had reached out and said, we had met with them actually a few years before, and actually about 4 or 5 years before. And they had originally told us, look, we want to do a transaction with you guys. And back in 2017, 2018, they had to get several things kind of lined up before it would make sense for them to do a transaction. So 2022 rolls, a few years later, they've paid off a bunch of debt, they're ready to do it. The owner there picks up the phone and calls me and says, we are ready to go. And I said, this is the worst time you could have ever called me. This is not going to happen. And he said, okay, well, if it takes 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it takes, we're going to be here to do this transaction and with you guys. And so obviously, I talked to Andrew, and I'm sure when I talked to Andrew about this, he's thinking, are you kidding me? We've lost a bunch of money. This is a fairly decent-sized transaction, and I knew it was the right thing for the business, but I knew it was a hard sell, and I knew there was no way that had we been still part of the family business, there is no way that I would have gotten my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, everybody else to write a check. It just was not going to happen, no matter if it was the right thing for the business or not. And after we righted things in 2023, these guys were again supporting us, knowing it was the right thing to grow the business, and we're just looking forward here. And so it was a huge show of faith in our business, in the leadership, and that we were making a right decision. And it's been a great decision ever since we did the transaction. So that to me is another one that was like a kind of watershed moment, saying again, they did exactly what they said they would do, and they stand behind us, and it's patient, and there's a whole lot of faith in our team. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Rick, anything you'd add?
I would add that our relationship with all the other venture companies, it's been great to bounce things off of them, our team to bounce things off. We're all in different businesses, but we all have the same problems or the same issues, and to have that ability to just pick up the phone call and any ventures team is just going to take our call and put us to the front.
Appreciate it. Anything else from the audience?
Somebody over there's got their hand up.
Somebody, I can't see. Oh, we've got a hand. Will you come to the microphone real quick so the group can hear you? Yeah, you. Okay, I'll probably repeat it just because we got a recording going.
Just a quick question on the due diligence process. Rick, it sounded like you ran a formal process, and you probably see a little bit of the pain that comes from other types of buyers. Could you lend some insight into the Markel process and how that might have differed from some of the other parties? And then Andrew, question for you. Could you give us some insight into like the conversations that you might have with Tom as it relates to these businesses? And what was it about the businesses that really drew you to them, putting on your best like Nick sleep hat, right, where it's like scale economy shared or Bertrand oligopoly, something like that, outside of brand and that sort of stuff that made you confident these would last for 100 years?
Appreciate that. So for the audience, two-part question. Again, I went to Georgia. It's better than Florida, but maybe not as good as the schools my partners went to. First one was around diligence process and maybe asking Rick to juxtapose interacting with Markel versus interacting with other partners. And then the second part was what got Markel excited about these businesses. So I'll let Rick add anything there.
Yeah, so we did go through a formal process, and I told in the formal process that I wanted a long-term or semi-long-term partner. And he heard me, but he didn't hear me. He brought in some, guys that were short-term, and you could read that through the initial interview. And then Markel came up, and actually, when I called up Andrew, Andrew said, I've had Metromont circled for the last 3 or 4 years. And so that resonated with me. And so how our investment banker ended up calling Markel, and I don't know that story. I think they had done something with Markel before, and the timing was just great. We knew that's where we wanted to go the whole time through the process, just because of selling the long-term decision making, which made a lot of sense to me. And like I said, I was thinking about the legacy of the company and our associates and taking care of them. Didn't want them to jump ship. Wanted them to feel comfortable. And then when we read the Markel style, we said, man, this is it. This is just a reflection of us. So
I'll add one detail there. So Rick's business has some pretty large projects in it over time. And when we first started talking, I think you were still making the decision of, am I sure I even really want to do this? That's a big decision for you. And you did have an advisor, and he was coaching us saying, man, it's about to get really good. And we said, look, we've looked at the numbers, and I think we're going to do our best to come up with a fair value. And he said, no, but I think it's about to get better in the next few months. And I said, look, we're not going to react to the next few months. We kind of looked at the business, and we're doing our best to come up with a fair number. Well, sure enough, a couple of those projects ended up getting kicked out, and he called back, sort of tail between his legs, and said, but you guys aren't going to move off your offer, are you? And I said, no, I told you before we weren't likely to move up. We're not likely to move down now. And in some ways, it's one of the greatest gifts we can get on the front end when working with someone, whether it's Hurricane Irma right out of the gate, or whether it's a business maybe not having its best month or quarter when we're going through this process. Because we look at it over a really long period of time, and the next quarter or the next month isn't going to coach us up or coach us down. We try to get a baseline. You asked about what I got excited about, and it's not just me, right? It's a team, not only at Markel Ventures, but Markel Group writ large. I sure as heck hope you got a sense of it today in meeting these people. So clearly you can imagine a world where houseplants are a part of our life 20 years from now. You can imagine a world where the ability to deliver concrete to a job site at the exact time and the exact cost that you promised is something that's valued in the world. So we understood those businesses had an opportunity to win. And then I met these guys. And I think you just got a tiny bit of that today. And that's a huge part of what we do is we are not going to be the experts in these businesses. These are the experts in the business. So our job at Markel is to meet folks like this and get a sense, are we like-minded in how we do it? and then move forward. So I hope today gave you a sense of what got us excited. I think we've got time for one quick question. We've got 1 minute left here. Yes, in the middle.
Speak up. So my question is for Joche and Group. When you did the acquisition in 24, did that change the ownership structure, Markel Ventures in Costa Farms, and how much is the revenues currently Costa Farms?
Two-part question. So when we added Battlefield to the Costa Farms family, and I'll just take this one, Joche. Did it change the ownership structure in the business? And then last question was, what is the revenue of Costa Farms today? So first part of the question is, we always start with what's good for the business. I think Joche alluded to that. And then on the back end, we solve between us, because Joche and his family remain shareholders, what's the right way to do this? And sometimes everybody puts money in. Sometimes Markel might choose to make a loan that we would expect to be paid back from the business before any other distributions come out. So there's different ways we approach it, but we never, ever, ever want our ownership dynamics to get in the way of something that's great for the business. And on the revenue side, we don't put that number out there. I think Joche did say in an interview after we partnered that it was north of $500 million. That was put in the public eye. You heard him say something like 50 times the size it was when it was early in its career today. So you can do your best to guess, but it's not a number that we share. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is the joy that I get every single day, is working with people like this and being in front of people like you all. I get emotional. I tried to find Elizabeth earlier. But these guys are awesome, and y'all are awesome, so thank you very much.